Hi, I'm Jana, a dark fantasy artist and book illustrator, and today we're gonna have another sketchbook tour, and it's going to be another one of my art school sketchbooks. But I promise today it's going to be a pretty one. I am in complete goblin mode today. There's soil underneath my nails because I've been working in the garden, and I've chopped off my hair for better or worse because it's spring and one wants to feel a little bit lighter. So yeah, I'm just gonna show you this sketchbook. I hope you'll enjoy it. Okay, so this is a big and fancy sketchbook comparatively, where I was mostly practicing painting, portrait painting, and working on personal concepts. So this was a sketch for an ink drawing that I called The Lovers. It was just like a tree with lots of hands, and I really liked it at the time. I'm not really working in that style anymore. This was for sketch for a piece called Rabbit Heart, which I also turned into a final that looks quite different. This was a concept sketch for a piece, well, for Kingfisher inspired piece. I was actually working on several at the time. For some reason I was a little bit Kingfisher obsessed. There's some mermaids, another Kingfisher sketch, and the lady in the clouds. I actually did an ink drawing of that one. Some fairies, some melting women in a candelabra. Oh yeah, this was another, well, it was a further along sketch of the concept you've seen before. I actually did an oil painting based on this. These were sketches for something called Illustration Friday, which was, I think it still exists. It's a website where everyone paints or draws something based on a prompt every Friday. This was inspired by the song Tall Tall Shadow, and it was for one of the Marf challenges I talked about in the last video, and our theme was, well, I think it was blending pieces with gold, blending media with gold, and one of the styles was doing an ink drawing and adding some gold. This was another one for Illustration Friday, and this was another one for the challenge, which was creating a graphite drawing and combining it with gold. And this is actually, the final of this is one of the first artworks I ever sold to a friend of mine, and she just recently sent me a photo of it still in her home. Now that one was another one for Illustration Friday. This was a study based on a photo. Oh yeah, this is a Doctor Who study. I was a bit of a Whovian at the time. A bit of a Whovian. Oh yeah, this is Black Books fan art, because for some reason I really wanted to combine Bernard Black with these little, I don't know what they're called in English. They're Pucci in German, but yeah, with these little fat angels, I kind of wanted to combine that. This is a pigeon study. Pigeons always good. This was for a series of ladies with weird fancy hats. Oh, Caitlin wants some attention. Not yet, not yet. So just portrait studies. So with this sketchbook, I kind of tried to make everything look nice. So I first did the studies, and this is a Lautrec study. And then I added these compositional elements to kind of make it look more cohesive and nice. Guess this was some kind of personal sketch, and this was study. More studies. This was probably from memory. This was a study of jackdaws. I love jackdaws. They're just the most beautiful birds. So they're my favorite corvids. And when I was living in Berlin, I was so sad because they're essentially extinct in Berlin, because they essentially lost against the crows, and well, so city birds, and especially birds that nest in buildings and houses, they're kind of suffering because as we renovate our homes, we're kind of getting rid of all the nooks and crannies where birds would usually nest. So there are less and less places where bird people can build their nests. And while in Berlin, you also have food rivalry, I think, between the crows, which are very, let's say, confident. They're very confident birds in Berlin. And yeah, so you will find jackdaws a bit more to the outskirts, but unfortunately I think that there are very few. I think the last numbers I read were from 2014, and at the time there were very few breeding pairs. And I was actually living close to one of the areas where at the time when, you know, that the data is from, there were still jackdaws living there. And when I was living there, which was a few years later, I didn't see any. So yeah, really sad. And it's weird because in most European cities, you still have quite a lot of jackdaws, and it was really baffling to me that they were essentially gone in Berlin. Yeah, so these were essentially live drawing sketches where me and my art class, we were just outside somewhere in the city and sitting down and just sketching people walking by. And it's such good practice when it comes to just, you know, creating dynamic lines and just catching the character and the personality of somebody and the movement. So it's great practice. This is actually a portrait of my friend Maren, I think. She had these very cool glasses at the time. They were sunglasses. It looks kind of a little bit devilish, right? A little bit demonic. Yeah, big fancy portrait study, just playing around with acrylic paint. So I think what I did was I had leftover paint and I didn't want it to go dry, so I just tried to use it up, which is why these portraits are in this brown paint, which was probably the one I had most of and I had most left over from. Yeah, more fancy portraits. I said they were beautiful, yeah? I said this was a beautiful sketchbook comparatively. It's not just my usual chicken scratch. I even had some gold here. And a few extra eyes. I think what happened was that I absolutely messed up the portrait and then I added more eyes to distract from that. But it looks quite cool. More studies. I mean, the lines are really nice. My lines aren't that nice anymore. Back then I was just in the habit of doing lots of live drawing and I had some very dynamic line work. And I think I've lost some of that nowadays. I have no idea what was going on here, but I hope I had fun. Study. Yeah, so that was In the Flash fan art, because I was watching In the Flash back then all the time. It was essentially on in the background all the time. I was obsessed. Some charcoal studies. Some experimental work, I guess. I really love this one. This is watercolor, and the paper isn't meant for watercolor necessarily. It's not watercolor paper, but if you don't layer too much, you can still work with it. So it's pretty good paper. And I really loved how this worked out with the colors and the blacks. And I mean, this stuff doesn't really look like the kind of work I'm actually doing nowadays. But back then I was just experimenting a lot. And this was more of an experimental sketchbook, I guess, where I was experimenting and painting and all that. More studies. I love just having this little bit of color in there. It's actually a really nice combination. Also more studies. I also oh no! Well, I guess the paint wasn't dry yet when I closed this. This was a study based on one of the dolls I made at the time, so that's why it looks the way it does. And I added some sand on this, and yeah, there's some texture in this. Okay, more jackdaws, because you can never paint too many jackdaws. Oh, my cat, she needs the attention and the food, so I guess I'll have to bring this to an end soon. This looks really cool. I think this was a selfie. Beautiful. Some ink drawings. Some pumpkins. I have these scanned somewhere, and I've always kind of meant to make something with them, to turn them into, I don't know, cards or something. Never did. Studies. I turned this into an illustration. I mean, it's still really rough, but they look like they should be fencing. Like there's some like they're fences. They're aristocrats, and I don't know, for some reason I think they should have their swords like on their belts somewhere. I don't know. Never mind me. I'm just rambling now, when I should finish this quickly so my cat can get food. Cute. Animal studies. More studies. Shameless studies. Because after In the Flash, I got obsessed with Shameless. For some reason, when I was in art school, I was just obsessed with TV shows. It was that period of my life. Anyhow, that's it. That's the big fancy art school sketchbook where I was just experimenting and having fun and doing a lot of portrait studies. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, perhaps you want to check out one of my other sketchbook tours. There will be more, because I still have a few sketchbooks to go, but most of them won't be this pretty. Next time we'll be back to chicken scratch. That's where you learn, that's where you grow. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching. Bye!